What's up, you guys? This is Devin with CFXTV Studios, back with another video, and today we're going to be talking about stands. Not just any stands, we're going to be talking about specifically Neewer stands. Now, this is an issue that I've always had with stands, but let's explain Neewer as a company. Neewer is a third-party company that makes photography equipment. Now, why would you want third-party photography equipment? Well, usually when you first go off and buy your new upgraded camera or real camera or pro camera or big DSLR mirrorless camera, you tend to figure out that one of the most important factors of you doing what you do with your camera to get the best image quality is buying extra equipment like flashes and things of that nature. That's one of the biggest things that separates DSLRs and real cameras from cell phones, is the fact that you can control things and everything is modular. You can add things like flashes and strobe systems and other accessories to your camera to ensure that you get the best quality possible. You can add and control flashes, you can add battery power, add monitors, all this other stuff, and those things separate you from the cell phone user. But once you realize that, you've paid a whole bunch of money for this camera thinking that the camera would do a lot more than it does just on its own merit of being a great camera, you find out that, hey, I need some other equipment. Dang. And so that cost becomes bigger, and then you end up getting cheaper third-party equipment like these Neewer devices or products, so to speak. But you'll get a Neewer speed light, you'll get Neewer lights, probably Neewer modifiers and all these other things. But the stands are what I have a gripe with today, and this is a nice looking silver, just a regular light stand from Neewer. Notice that I've taken out the adapter here. I know I'm not going to have any B-roll for this, but trust me, it's not worth it. I don't endorse any, or I'm not, endorsed by any product, or I'm not sponsored by any product, or I don't have any bias when it comes to a brand for money. So this stand has a big issue, and this is not just with this stand. It's with all the Neewer stands, I've realized, because I've done research on more stands. And I was just trying to get a cheap stand because I use light stands for microphones, I use light stands for mono lights, speed lights, all these other things, and I use that 1/4 inch 20 thread at the top for my my mounts and all these other things. But if you notice, when I back this screw out here, this is the one that goes to the 1/4 20 thread to 5/8 inch adapter. And I don't know if you can see this, and I don't know if I'm gonna zoom in, but this screw looks a little dark. The thread on this screw looks a little dark. And if you look closely, you can see it start to brown and rust, especially at the top where people wouldn't expect to see rust. And then when you start to screw it in, let me see if I can thread it because I'm not right-handed. There we go. All right, so when you start to thread it, it feels pretty good. It doesn't feel that bad. But you can start to see the development of some type of dark rust and oxidation. It's just not good. And it makes me feel bad because I bought it from Amazon like this. You're like, well, why didn't you take it back, Devin? I was like, nah, it'll be fine because it still does its job. But here's the thing. You don't want to be on a job cranking and cranking and cranking at a screw thread thinking that it's going to come out faster, and you end up being slowed down, because I can see rust on it right here, right now. But I don't know what they do to get rust on these stands, but it's not just these stands. It's also their C stands, and all these other stands that they make all have rust on them from the factory, from where we get them from. And it's just very frustrating to be in an industry where you need stuff to actually work, and they don't advertise rust with these stands, so why is it rusty when I get it? And that really frustrates me. I never get rusty anything else when I buy tools. I never get rusty car parts, and some of my car parts cost just as much as that stand, but it never comes to me rusty. And so I say all that to say, don't get Neewer stands. As a matter of fact, that's not the only problem. Notice here how I have taken out the 1/4 20 thread adapter. Let me get my other one. All right. Now this is a Flashpoint stand from Adorama. You know I love Flashpoint. I got the speed lights and I got the mono light. But here is the 1/4-20, and there's no rust on these screws, by the way. All right, now here's the 1/4-20" thread thingy that you use for your speed lights and mounting things. Now this right here works perfectly fine because of this little, I guess you would call it a flange or separation here. This works with everything that I have, whether it be speed light mounts, whether it be mic mounts, anything. It works fine. But the one that comes with this, which I took off for good reason, it doesn't allow me to slide my speed light mounts on there. None of my speed light mounts work with this. Did I take this out of frame? Yeah, I took this out of frame. None of my speed light mounts work with this because that flange is just a little bit thicker. I guess it's just product control. What do they call it? Quality control. It's just not good at Neewer when it comes to these stands. I guess they want to beat the curb and get the cheapest materials and put it together for you. Yes, but it just doesn't work all that great because you end up having defects and problems that you wouldn't otherwise. Like that Manfrotto stand that I have, I've never had any issues with that. Never had any issues with rust, no. And when I pull the screws back, it never feels different. When I screw it in, when I pull it out, it never feels different. It doesn't feel like it's about to snap. It doesn't feel like it's gonna hurt my hand when I go cranking at it. All these things matter when you use your stands every day, day in and day out, and people have to rely on you. You see what I'm saying? You don't want your hand to be hurt and you have to go back to your camera, you know, and use your hands for all that. It's just, and then some of them are stiff, some of them are really light. I mean, it works, it operates. It's a little stiff right here at the bottom here. If you haven't slid it all the way down here at the bottom, it's a little right here at the bottom. It's just like, but here at the top is fine. But here at the bottom, it's just real. And I don't even know why it does that. I've never had that kind of problem with any stand before. I'm like, really? Is this material that sensitive that it is reacting to the parts that I haven't used before? And it was particularly stiff. And this is really loose right here. Like, okay, so when you're using stands, pros don't back screws all the way out. Pros know that you shouldn't be backing screws all the way out. Why? Because you use these stands in and out, and pretty much every other day, you go back and screws all the way out. You got to crank these suckers all the way back in. It takes time. The more time you take to set up something, the less professional you look. And then when you look unprofessional in front of your clients, guess what? They don't want you anymore. Like, dang, that dude took 30 minutes to put a stand up, and then you figure out you done pushed it all the way down too far, and it doesn't triangulate, and it doesn't hold up. Look, I'm telling you, there's certain things, tricks of the trade that the professionals do that this works against. All right, another thing that I had a gripe with this stand is this cushion thing right here. All right, so they're not real like air cushions like the pro stands, like the ones that come from Flashpoint that I get for an equivalent price. It's a little bit more expensive on the Flashpoint side, but you know, look at this. All right, you got spring cushions in here, which is not bad. But spring cushions don't help your gear at all. You might be saying, Devin, no, spring cushions work better than the other cushions. I'd rather have no spring cushions in here and have this have a little bit more of a foreseeable adjustment here. You might be saying, what does that mean, Devin? Well, when I'm pushing this up and down on my Manfrotto and everything like that, and it has not aluminum cushions, but let's see, air cushions. You have this stand where the material here doesn't get snagged. Now this is at the top is different from the bottom. Like it feels weird. It's like at the top it's different, and then at the bottom, let's go to the bottom here. I'm gonna keep you from working, and the bottom is extremely loose. And I haven't even had this stand for a year. Manfrotto I have for like 3 years. I have other Flashpoint stands, but it doesn't even look like, listen to this. That shouldn't happen. That clank right there, that's bad for your material. That's bad for your whatever you have sitting up here. If you loosen that first one and you have this fully extended, which is like 9 to 11 inches. If you have this fully extended, I think it's 7 inches actually. But if you have this fully extended and you drop the first one, that clanking, that bottoming out, that tapping, that is going to damage your equipment. That I've done it to a point where I was like, okay, I'm just drop this one, and it did that, and it damaged your equipment. It could short something out. It could break a flash tube. All of this is extra movement, or even worse, it can make the base move, because the base is not all that sturdy because it doesn't come out all that far. And so all these things you think about, wow. Now, if you keep the stand, like for example, I have another Neewer stand like this, and it's holding my light and everything like that. It never moves. I never, unadjust it. I never loosen it up and store it. It's just there. And for good reason, because I don't want to take it out in the field because it's not ready for the field. It will never be ready for the field. And then this one, I'm about ready to just toss in the trash can because it's so inconvenient to use in comparison to all my other stands. That's why I ended up getting these Flashpoint stands, and these Flashpoint stands don't feel different. The only reason why these Flashpoint stands feel just a tad bit different is because the air cushions are different than the spring cushions, and they come down slower, but they consistently come down slow. See what I'm saying? You see that fluid action? Fluid action, because it's just coming down at a reasonable rate. Nothing taps unless I push it down as hard as I can. But if something's on there, it eases it down. It eases it down so you don't have to worry about that snapping, clamping action destroying your equipment. Because think about it. See, you have to understand that, for example, my Flashpoint 600 Xplor has a friction-fitted metal housing for my flash tube. So when I push my flash tube in there, it doesn't click. It just kind of friction fits in there. If I were to then put this on this stand and it goes like this, that friction-fitted, I would say, flash tube might slide out a little bit, inch out, inch out, inch out, and then one day I might come down here and do this one time, bang, that flash tube is out. $100 flash tube, you gotta buy now. You see what I'm saying? So it's very important that you get stands that are good enough for your equipment. But these stands, even though, you got these stands from Flashpoint, they're cheap. These stands, they shouldn't be a product at all. And because it's just false advertising whichever way you go. Because if you're putting something on these stands, chances are it's going to be decently heavy or decently expensive. And you just don't want to risk your equipment. I'm done with CFX Studios. I hope this video was helpful. Yeah, I just threw it down because I'm really tired of those stands. I'm going to keep this other stand out the shot and make sure it doesn't block my light. But at the end of the day, what experiences have you guys had with stands? I know this was kind of like a little bit of a gutsy video here, but I just want to know your experiences and tell me what you think in the comments below. I'm done with CFX Studios, and stay tuned for the next video.